I am joined in the Talkback studio by Chris Quinn, who is the Children's Commissioner for Northern Ireland, and he's here to take some of your calls if you want to pick up the phone or indeed text some of your questions and comments. I'll put them to Chris on how best to protect children and young people here in Northern Ireland. The number to call is 03030 80 55 55. We'll take your texts, questions, comments on all the big hot topics around children's rights and young persons' rights in Northern Ireland. Welcome, Chris. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
You've been out and about quite a bit recently on a bit of a tour around the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Now, for our audience, that was a treaty done back in 1989.
Yep.
It was subsequently ratified by the UK government. It was incorporated into law in Scotland.
That's right.
Last year,
Yeah.
which means it was made domestic law in Scotland, but has not been incorporated into domestic law in England or in Northern Ireland. I think in Wales they have a kind of a duty to have regard to it, but it's
That's
not
right,
incorporated
yeah.
fully there. So so let's start there, because this really matters to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And look, thanks for starting there, because I'm in post 2 years now. And over that period of time, I've talked to thousands of children. My office and I engaged directly with around 16,000 children and young people last year. As you know, and as your show has discussed today and on previous days, children and young people here face big issues. I knew before coming into post that the key issues would include poverty, which you've talked about today already, and other issues as well. You know, we have a crisis in special educational needs. We have 19,500 children who are legally defined as homeless. And those numbers are absolutely mind-boggling when you compare what's going on in the Republic of Ireland, where the figures are about a quarter of that. We have record numbers of children in care. We had a big review of children's social care 2 years ago, and since that time things have actually got worse. So we have 4,000, I think it's almost 4,200 children in care.
Why is it getting worse over time? Shouldn't it get better over time?
Goodness, I think I'm going to be really honest. I just think a lack of action. I feel.
By whom?
Well, by our legislators. We need our government to think about children in every policy they develop and every pound that they spend. So, you know, at the moment I feel that children and young people are invisible in health reform. I feel that in the programme for government, the children and young people are only mentioned a few times. And in terms of children's social care, we had an expert, Professor Ray Jones, spent 2 years here doing a big review that was commissioned by Robin Swall when he was Minister. And he spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people, and he made solid recommendations. But those things are moving so slowly. So I suppose that brings me back to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child.
Which you think could be a game changer if we were to take it more seriously in terms of incorporation?
Yeah, I am of the mind that incorporating, so what I'm talking about is full and direct incorporation.
That means we make it our domestic law.
Make it the law.
The law of Northern Ireland.
Every article. So the convention.
There are 41 articles in there. They all become the law.
42.
42 articles.
They would all be. Now, there are elements of the convention that are protected in law, but there are still gaps. And I believe that full and direct incorporation would be the single most impactful thing that our government, that the Northern Ireland Executive, could do for children and young people here.
Now explain why, because it's one thing to have this as a nice ambition, as a legal ambition, but if we're really focused on children and young people and changing their lives for the better, how would making the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child Northern Irish law, how would that change the lives of young people and children here?
Yep, and I think that's a fair question, and hopefully one that I can explain for your listeners. So first of all, I would say, and I'm not dodging the question, but the constitutional settlement here in Northern Ireland is better than what happened in Scotland in terms of if we do go for full and direct incorporation. So what happened in Scotland, you saw a challenge, right? I think that because of our constitutional settlement, we would be in a better position, and I want Northern Ireland to be the best place that a child grows up, right? So to answer your question directly, what difference would it make? The first difference is a fundamental shift, a change in how children are viewed in our policy making process and how we spend public money. So along with incorporation, I would be arguing that government needs to carry out child's rights impact assessment on every decision they make.
They could do that now, couldn't they?
It's not mandatory. It's a choice, and to be fair, some departments do it well. But the example that I often give the children and the parents is, and this, you might find this a quirky one, but I think it brings the thing to life. So currently, if you're going to build a housing estate, there's things you have to do to get through planning. One of those things is a bat survey. So you got to survey the area to make sure that you're preserving bats. And who wouldn't want to do that? I totally support that, right? But we don't have to think about children. So our communities are designed not with children in mind. You know, lack of play parks, lack of play space. Children would talk to me a lot about...
I have never thought about this way. So under our rules, we have to be more concerned about the impact of building this new estate for bats than we do for children. Yes,
that's correct. So, and what I'm arguing for, and I know it is quirky, and we kind of, but I think it's a good example, you know, of how if the convention was incorporated, that planning would be affected.
Right. And this might mean, for example, if you're going to put the roads in that way or put the housing in a certain way, you've got to ask questions. Is this more likely to cause dangers to children in terms of crossings? And have you paid close attention to all of that as you lay it out?
Yeah. And look, talking about road safety, so you were saying earlier, I've been on the road talking to young people. A big thing that children and young people talk to me a lot about is road safety. Safety going to school, coming home from school, on buses they talk about active travel. You know, so this is one example of how that incorporation. Yep.
I'll push back a little bit on behalf of some of the politicians, because there are some politicians in Northern Ireland who resist this. For example, the DUP is opposed to the incorporation of this UN convention into Northern Ireland law. And one of the reasons they have stated over the years for their resistance to this is it might affect the rights of parents to make decisions on behalf of the child, because this will really beef up the rights of the child, and they're concerned that it may diminish the rights of parents. What do you say to them?
I say that they should read the convention more closely, because the convention talks very strongly about the important role that parents play in a child's life, and it talks about how, you know, as a child gets older and experiences more agency, you know, that balance tips between a parent guiding and advising a child towards a child being able to experience more agency and have a say in issues that affect their lives.
Let me give you an example.
Yeah.
It's one from, we were talking about RE and religion in schools recently.
Yep.
If you have humanist or atheist parents who do not want their kid going to a morning assembly because it includes some religious worship as part of it, but the child themselves wants to go, Who decides whether the kid's being withdrawn or not?
Well, okay, so the religious worship is a great one. I've followed that story closely. And I think it's a good example of how the convention both protects the rights of the child to have a religion and practice a religion, but also the rights of the child and their family to opt out. And
I think I'm talking about where the parents and the child disagree.
Who wins?
The child wants to go to morning assembly and likes singing songs about Jesus and likes taking part in the worship, but the parents saying, I don't want my kid going there because I don't want them to grow up religious, right? If we were to incorporate the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, it's going to say to the parents, I'm sorry, isn't it? It's going to say your kid gets to decide that.
Not necessarily, but what the convention says is due regard, right? So under Article 12, the child has a right to have a say on issues that affect their life, and people in positions of power need to give those things due regard. So that doesn't mean that it's a free-for-all, right? That means that the child can express their views and their wishes, but they must be taken into consideration. So if that child wants to engage in religious worship, I think, you know, I would imagine there's a perfectly logical and reasonable explanation, and I would be supporting that child's right to engage, absolutely.
Even though the parents say, I don't want them going?
Yeah, I mean...
So the parents would lose their role there. They wouldn't be the decider in that case. It would be the child.
The parents have a key role in providing advice and support.
There you are.
Nurturing.
A lot of parents say my role is not to provide advice. I am to be the parent, which means I am acting in the best interest of my child. I'm making the decisions.
So there's the key word, best interest, right? So
in their judgment.
We have to, I suppose, from a commissioner's perspective.
You can see already why some parents will be concerned about this. And it might be that it's the other way around. It's very religious parents who want their children to go to the morning assembly. And it's a child who doesn't want to go. And again, we're into a tussle, a tug of war. Who has priority here, the parents or the child? And it could extend to lots of other things beyond morning assembly, to do with sexuality, gender, RSE, teaching in schools, all kinds of things. You're into a legal minefield here, aren't you?
Well, the legal minefield piece would be for me, so the legally enforceable piece of this is, has the child had the right to have a say?
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm in a court of law, and do you know another real life example, and I'm not saying that the religious education isn't a good example, but I speak to a lot of children who are care experienced, and they would talk to me. Their slogan, the slogan that they use is "nothing about me without me." So children and young people often feel that decisions are made about them in terms of their care, in terms of kinship care, but their voice isn't listened to and isn't adequately acted upon. So I think there's a good example of how a child's voice should be listened to, and in terms of the legally enforceable aspect of Article 12, is a real solid
whether it's
outcome.
just listened to or whether the parents can still direct what happens in that case, because parents' rights is an issue for quite a few people, of course, not just children's rights. Orla's on the line. Orla, you got a question for our Children's Commissioner, Chris Quinn.
Hi, William. Thanks very much. And hi, Chris. Thanks for coming on the radio today to talk about this really important issue and the UN Convention on Protecting Children. I just have one question, really, and I suppose it relates to Article 18 of the Convention around every child has the right to have their parents supported to look after them. And it's in relation to your recent withdrawal, Chris, from the Task and Finish group in the Department of Education, looking at restraint and seclusion of children with additional needs in the education, in all different education settings in Northern Ireland. I wonder, could you just give us a bit of information as to why Nikki had to withdraw from that process, please?
Yeah, well, look, thank you, Orla, for your question. It's a really important...
Nikki is the Northern Ireland
Commissioner
for
Children and Young People. Thank you. Yes, so this issue of restraint and seclusion is one that we've been working on for a long time. So there was a report published by my predecessor, Kulu Yasuma, I think in 2017, and that was in the back of parents airing their concerns that their child...
Yeah. I think we got. I think we know what the issue is. With whether kids can be pulled out of classrooms and secluded and that kind of thing. But the question is, why did the Commission withdraw from this task force? Well,
look, regrettably, I made a decision that we should withdraw from that task force because, in my opinion, we've seen a massive U-turn by the Minister for Education and his department in terms of repealing Article 41C, or 41C I should say, which gives grounds for reasonable force to be used to maintain good order in the classroom. The previous Minister for Education said that they were going to repeal that, and what we have seen with regards to the department is a complete U-turn. Now, in terms of the Task and Finish group, we've stayed in there. I've written to the Minister. December 24, I wrote to him to air my concerns. We stayed in the Task and Finish group because we felt we owed it to those parents and those children. But the process has become so tokenistic. We do feel that the views and the research of all of the experts...
Do you not have confidence in the Education Minister in this area?
In this particular instance, I am of the mind that he's absolutely U-turned, and I feel that my office and I owe it to the children and the parents who so bravely spoke out about the things that have happened to their children. And this is an issue that still comes up when I'm out in communities, when I'm visiting schools.
It's a serious matter to do with restraint and seclusion of children.
It really
in a
is.
School context. But you've walked away as a commission from the very group looking into this.
Yeah, so other groups have done this too. In August, the Royal College of Nursing withdrew from the group.
Well, what does that say about your attitude to the Education Minister and how seriously he's taking these issues.
Yeah, well, look, as I say, I've written to him. I'm still waiting on a response.
Well, tell the public what you think.
Yeah, and I wrote to him again just yesterday, asking for that response again. But look, again, in real terms, what does this mean for children? What does this mean for classroom assistants?
Well, what does your walking away from this task force tell the public about what the Northern Ireland Children's Commissioner feels about the leadership of the Education Minister in this?
It means that on this guidance, on updated guidance, it doesn't meet child rights standards. And for us to put our names to something like that when we feel that it is in breach of children's rights would be wrong.
So you believe the Education Minister's standards here are in breach of children's rights?
On this issue, yes.
On this issue?
Yes.
Legally in breach?
Legally in breach. Well, now you're getting into, I mean, there are...
Otherwise, what does it mean? Breach of rights?
Yeah, well, there are other laws that do protect children's rights in this area right now.
But is he in breach of the law, do you believe?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe if a child is restrained or secluded within the context of Article 41C, that is an absolute breach of children's rights.
So are you bringing legal action against the Education Minister then?
No.
Why not, if you believe that children need to be protected?
Because we await the Minister's response, and I am hopeful that he will return to the position that the previous Minister did.
He'll do another U-turn?
Well, hopefully, yeah.
You think so? And if he doesn't?
If he doesn't, well, then we have to talk to our legal team, and we have to talk to our colleagues in the sector. I mean, I would mention the Children's Law Centre here as well. They have also pulled out of the Task and Finish group. From my perspective, we can't put our names to a piece of legislation or guidance that puts children at risk and that puts classroom assistants.
Effectively, you're saying to the Minister, unless you change your position on this, I'm putting you on notice that we're looking at taking legal action to protect the rights of children, which we believe you're in breach of.
What I would say is it's definitely a consideration. I'm not going to sit here and say we will proceed with legal. We need to find out more. We need to hear his response to my concerns, and then I will speak to my legal team and we will make decisions. But we are in front of Education Committee in February on this issue.
Thank you very much, Orla, for that question. I should point out that we contacted the other executive parties on the question about the incorporation of the UN Convention into our domestic law. The DUP said they do not support that move. Alliance and Sinn Féin say they do support the incorporation of the UN Convention into domestic law in Northern Ireland. And the Ulster Unionist Party said they are not in a position to comment on it at this time. I don't know what that means. Does that mean you don't have a view, Ulster Unionist Party? Get a view. Let us know what your view is, and we'll put it out there to everybody else. 03030 80 55 55. We're talking to Chris Quinn, our Commissioner for Children and Young People. Isn't that right, to give you a proper title? Presbyterian Church been in the news a lot. Safeguarding concerns. What do you make of all of that?
Wow, I was really anticipating that you would ask me about this because I've listened. I'm a big fan of the show, by the way, William. I'll put that out there. So I listen to you all the time, and I've listened to your coverage of this story. I'm going to say as well that I wrote to the executive, the Northern Ireland executive, in October, outlining that I am really worried that we in Northern Ireland are sleepwalking into some kind of a safeguarding disaster. And whilst I don't know the ins and outs of the Presbyterian churches, what happened there, we're waiting to see. I am really worried about the context here in Northern Ireland. If I look at other jurisdictions, what's happened in the Republic of Ireland over the last couple of years with children going missing and skeletal remains found of a child. If I'm looking at Rochdale in England, where there's grooming gangs that are still getting prosecuted for what they done to 13-year-old children a number of years ago, I think we are naive to think that these things aren't happening under our nose. Now, I don't want to... I'm not saying this is Presbyterian Church.
No, those are very serious examples you're giving in response to my question about the Presbyterian Church. I don't think we're talking about any of those issues.
No, and I just want to say something in terms of sexual offences against children. They're at an alarming rate. And look, we don't know if the Presbyterian Church's issues are to do with sexual offences against children. But what I do know is that these things are on the rise. And we have more. I don't have the data right in front of me here. It's in my bundle somewhere. But basically what we know is that I think it's something like 55% of reported sexual offences are against those children, or against people under 18. So with regards to the Presbyterian Church, and I know there's lots of great people there, and I met the moderator a while ago before he resigned, and I do think we need to sit up and take stock in terms of safeguarding across the board in Northern
They're involved
Ireland.
in an awful lot of youth work.
They are.
All of our churches are. I mean, I
Yep.
think churches are the biggest provider of the voluntary sector,
Yeah,
aren't they?
and that's it. I mean,
Youth work. Do you have confidence in the safeguarding work of the Presbyterian Church with respect to all of that youth work that they currently do?
the faith-based youth work in Northern Ireland is wonderful.
I'm talking about the Presbyterian
The
Church.
Presbyterian
given what we've
Church.
seen and heard so far.
Yeah, well, look,
Do they have your confidence in terms of their safeguarding?
I have no evidence to make me worry about that. And that's not to say something might come up later. You've said about faith-based youth work. My background's in youth work, so I know the great work that faith-based youth work does. I also know the great work the Presbyterian Church does in terms of poverty and safeguarding and exclusion. You know.
Got a question about puberty blockers. Obviously, it's been paused across the UK and in Northern Ireland in terms of the dispensing of puberty blockers by the NHS for children and young people. The government is now talking about a new study by King's College London, an experiment of a kind involving 250 girls and boys to test the efficacy and safety of puberty blockers. And this has become very controversial. Some people saying to West Streeting that you're turning children here into guinea pigs. A lot of people are very upset about this study that's to be launched. Your thoughts on that? Do you support this kind of study?
Well, I would need to look closer at that particular study, but on puberty blockers, I think, this is an issue that I have written to the Minister about. My concern here is about the impact on children and young people and their rights, and in particular their mental health. So I know I've spoke to children myself who have experienced severe mental ill health due to questioning their, sexual identity and sexual preferences. But from a child's rights perspective, what we need to do is ensure the safety of children, ensure the voice of the child, ensure that they get adequate health care. This
study would involve injecting half that group of children with hormone-suppressing drugs that pause the physical changes of puberty, such as breast, periods and facial hair, and then studying the efficacy and the safety of that kind of drugs regime with children. Any concerns about that?
Well, look, as I say, I need to look deeper into it. It does sound to me, I don't like the idea that children would be used as guinea pigs. I don't like that at all.
Well, that's the language some people are using.
Yeah.
It's a scientific study.
Yeah.
A medical study.
Look, let me look further into that. But what I would say, as I say, I'm thinking about the children who are affected by this right now. And I do think that there is a risk in terms of puberty blockers and in what's happening, there is a risk of driving people to the black market, which is more risky, I think.
Chris Quinn, the Children's Commissioner.